I'll be right or here eating my pork rinds.
Now, let's be honest right away. The opening joke about gender pronouns is rough. It lands with that familiar feeling of, oh no, are they about to mistake being obnoxious for being funny again? That concern is real, especially with a franchise like this, because lazy offense is the easiest trap in the world for parody to fall into. But what surprised me is that the trailer does not seem interested in staying aimed at just one target for very long. It keeps turning. It keeps swinging in every direction. Republicans get mocked. White people get mocked. Black people get mocked. Queer-coded humor gets tossed in, then undercut by another joke coming from a different angle. The goal, at least judging from the trailer, does not seem to be let's bully one group and call it comedy. The goal seems to be something closer to total equal opportunity disrespect. And weirdly enough, that gives the whole thing a better chance of working. Because Scary Movie was never supposed to be polite. The first movie hit because it felt reckless, fast, and just self-aware enough to understand how ridiculous everything was. The second one was messier, sure, but it still had that same we are going to throw 10 jokes at you in 30 seconds and trust that at least 4 of them stick energy. The third had highs and lows, but when it hit, it really hit. Then the series completely lost the plot. The fourth and fifth movies stopped feeling like actual parodies and started feeling like hollow reference machines. Instead of building jokes around horror movies, they just waved at famous titles and expected recognition to do all the work. That is not satire. That is cinematic pointing, and that is why this sixth movie matters more than people think. It is not just another sequel. It is a chance to prove that Scary Movie still understands the difference between parody and inventory. The trailer at least suggests it might. The biggest reason for that hope is the return of the people who mattered most in the first place. The Wayans energy is back, and that matters more than any individual movie reference. Marlon Wayans as Shorty, Sean Wayans as Ray, and Faris as Cindy, Regina Hall as Brenda, that is not just nostalgia bait. That is the actual comic DNA of the franchise. Those characters were never funny just because they existed in spoof versions of horror plots. They were funny because the performers knew how to turn chaos into rhythm. They knew how to overreact without losing timing. They knew how to play stupidity like music. The trailer immediately feels more alive because those faces are back in that madness. And honestly, seeing the core group reunited does not just feel sentimental. It feels structurally correct. Scary Movie works best when it has a center of comic performers strong enough to survive the avalanche of nonsense around them. Without that, parody scenes become disposable. With that, even a dumb joke can catch fire because the performers know exactly how to stretch, twist, or completely derail it. What also gives me some hope is that the movie does not appear to be hiding from the current state of horror. That is crucial. A parody franchise is only as alive as its ability to say something about the moment it exists in. This trailer clearly wants to go after the modern horror landscape. From legacy sequels and trauma-heavy prestige horror to TikTok-coded weirdness and viral icon monsters. Scream, Halloween, Terrifier 3, M3GAN. The Substance Sinners, Wednesday, Weapons, it is all getting dragged into the blender. That is exactly what this movie should be doing, and more importantly, it does not look like the references are there just to say, hey, remember this? At least not entirely. The trailer seems built around the idea that horror culture itself has become ripe for dissection again. The obsession with reviving old franchises. The way every scary movie now gets turned into a conversation. The way every horror release arrives with think pieces. Fan wars, nostalgia politics, and a desperate attempt to crown some new icon before the opening weekend is even over. That is rich material. That is actual comedy fuel. If Scary Movie 6 can tap into that instead of just naming the films, then it has a real shot at being relevant instead of merely loud. And yes, the trailer is loud. Very loud, but loud is not a flaw for this series. Loud is the engine. The question is whether the noise has shape. Here, I think it might. There is a sense that the movie understands the current horror ecosystem well enough to start poking holes in it. The legacy sequel angle especially feels like the right target. Horror has become obsessed with bringing everybody back. The final girl returns. The masked killer returns. The trauma returns. The branding returns. The audience gets sold the same nightmare with a shinier grief monologue. Of course, Scary Movie should attack that. It would be insane not to. The trailer also seems aware that culture outside horror is fair game too. That is risky because this is where parody can drift from sharp into exhausting. But I will say this, if the movie is going to offend, the trailer at least makes a strong case that it intends to spread the damage around. And that makes a difference. Comedy that only punches in one direction gets boring very fast. Comedy that ricochets everywhere at least has a chance to feel alive, even when it misfires. That does not mean every joke works. Some absolutely do not. Some feel like they are one rewrite away from being clever instead of just noisy. But I also caught myself having the exact reaction this franchise is supposed to trigger. That mix of they cannot seriously be doing this, and why am I laughing at this anyway? That reaction matters. It means the movie may still understand how to build comic whiplash instead of just dead air. I also think the timing helps. Dropping this in the same general horror conversation as Scream 7 makes the whole thing feel more pointed. It turns Scary Movie 6 into a rude mirror held up to a genre that has become strangely self-important in places. Horror is healthier than it was years ago, but it is also more brand conscious, more prestige conscious, and sometimes a little too pleased with its own mythology. That makes it the perfect time for a spoof to come in and start kicking chairs over again. And maybe that is the biggest reason I have some optimism here. The trailer does not feel desperate to prove that Scary Movie can still exist. It feels annoyingly confident that it can. That confidence could still blow up in its face, obviously. A good trailer is not the same thing as a good movie. We have all been tricked before. But this one at least understands the assignment. It knows the franchise only works if it is willing to be shameless, fast, and a little dangerous. It knows the cast chemistry matters. And it knows modern horror is full of targets that have earned a little mockery. So no, I am not ready to declare that Scary Movie is fully back. That would be way too generous, way too early, and frankly a little stupid. But I am ready to say this looks more alive than the franchise has looked in a very long time. And for a series that once seemed completely dead, that alone is saying something. Scary Movie 6 hits theaters on June 12th. And based on this trailer, I am not expecting elegance.